Crime and sexual assault on assignment. Hi, it's Susan Knisely, and welcome to today's episode of I Travel Nurse TV. Nice to see you. I hope you're enjoying yourself on your assignment or on your vacation or anywhere you are in the world. Okay, today's episode is on the effects of crime and sexual assault and how that affects you as a travel nurse. Now, some people may or may not have experienced this on their assignments, but just know that there is always the chance for crime to happen to you for a couple of different reasons. One being is that many times us travel nurses are traveling solo. So when we travel solo, we are sort of already in a vulnerable position because we are sort of forced to trust the people around us. We're sort of forced to trust a travel company. We're forced to trust a hospital system, a location, people that we work with. And when they start to know that you are a solo traveler, that's going to some place without a support system, sometimes people that have the criminal mindset will take advantage of that. Now, I have experienced that in my own personal situation, and it has caused some problems with me taking contracts and conducting work-related activities and so forth. Now, the prevalence of crime and sexual assault for travel nurses while they're on assignment is not something that has been officially studied. So therefore, I cannot pull statistics that would actually, say that out of the 10,000 nurses on a travel assignment today within the United States, about 2% have been victimized by crime. So there's no official statistics on that. However, I do know of some individuals who have experienced that themselves. Now, what do you do if that happens to you? Now, if you've taken some of the recent courses that we were required to take through Joint Commission standards, you will see that the Joint Commission is having sort of a push on being able, healthcare providers being able to identify victims of domestic violence, people who are, victims of crime, but, heavily focused on victims of domestic violence. Now, but usually when we take these courses, they're usually focused on us as a nurse taking care of another patient. And there's nothing really within the literature that I've seen that addresses if something like this happens to us. And so what does that mean for you? Okay, now let's just say that you are on an assignment and you are victimized by a crime, or there might be some sexual misconduct within the hospital system that you're working with. Maybe perhaps a boss or another co-worker is sort of pressuring you into performing sex or having sex with them under the guise of just going out with them, and then jacking you into a situation in which you feel like if you don't have some kind of intimate relationship with that person, then you might not, be able to keep your job. I know that I have been in that situation both as an agency nurse and as a traveler, where I felt like if I didn't have that kind of relationship with someone, then I wouldn't keep my job. And then I was also afraid that the travel company would hold it against me. Now, that has occurred actually to me personally with Meridian Medical Staffing. There was some sexual misconduct up in Alaska, and rather than Meridian Medical Staffing holding the perpetrator accountable, they sort of held it against me and just sort of left me stranded up in Alaska to fend for myself, even though a domestic violence unit and the local police were helping me with that. So what does that mean for you? Okay, so now keep in mind that a travel nurse company wants to keep their good relationship with the hospital that you're contracted with. So when you are a travel nurse that has been victimized by a crime and you feel like that you need to leave because of the crime, well, the person, you're there within the specific location. The crime is happening to your travel company is in a whole nother city or state. most of the time, a lot of times in a whole different time zone, so they're not seeing what you're going through. And so, to the best of my understanding, I have never seen a travel nurse company, whether that's a small company or even a large company, have any kind of policy or any kind of clause in place, even within your own contract, that would address these kinds of issues. Like, let's just say you got physically assaulted when you were in a city and it was known to the local authorities and you felt like you needed to leave, based on your safety. Well, I never see anything in a clause in a contract that would allow you to get out of that contract due to safety reasons. I mean, that would have to be on an individual basis, as to whether or not the travel company will be supportive of you. But I've got to tell you, from my experience and then what I've seen in other victim experiences, is that the travel nurse companies would rather be more loyal to the hospital system so they can keep placing nurses there, rather than, like I said, holding the perpetrators accountable or helping you out as a crime victim. Now, let's just say a crime occurs outside of the hospital system, you get the police involved and whatever. And you know what, if your company is not being supportive of you and you feel like that it is not in your best interest, or you're too scared to stay in a city or state, then of course I recommend you contact your local authorities again, and perhaps even tell them that you're having problems even with your travel company, and you're leaving no matter what, whether it breaks the contract or not. That would be my recommendation as far as looking into it from that standpoint. But then now, what happens if you are a victim of sexual misconduct at the hospital itself? Okay, so what do you do? What do you do if a boss or a charge nurse or another employee, male or female, puts you in a position where you feel like you need to have an intimate relationship with them in order to keep your job? Okay, so now this is ultimately, I would have to say, no, you as a nurse are not there to sexually entertain somebody within that hospital system. That you are there to take care of patients within the hospital. You are not there as somebody's little plaything. Okay, so I need you to understand that. But then you're also torn between, well, is my travel company going to be mad at me? Are they going to hold this against me if I just leave? Will I be allowed to work at this hospital system again if I just leave? Like, for example, I am already seeing some early signs of a situation happening to me at, through a Tenet hospital. Now Tenet owns a lot of hospitals throughout the United States, so this causes a big problem for me, where I'm already thinking that I would like to leave, but I don't want to burn my relationship with the Tenet health system. So like, what did I do in my situation? Well, I'm lucky in the fact that Tenet as a corporation has reporting mechanisms that I can work through to address these issues. So what I did is that I contacted that particular department within Tenet's organization, and I just let them know. Okay, now how do I handle that with my travel company? Well, you know what? I'm going to tell them the same thing. But that's why I said it's very, very hard sometimes for nurses to be able to come forth and address these kinds of issues, because because we want a paycheck and we don't want to burn our relationship with the hospital system. We don't want a travel company to hate us. We don't want to be out of a job. But the trouble is, if we don't stand up and do these kinds of things for ourselves, then, it has the potential of getting worse, especially if we go to another travel company or try to go to another hospital system and they can't figure out why they can't get a reference from our last employer. I've even come to the point where I've even told, new employers, new travel companies, I had crime happen to me on my last assignment, and, I made a law enforcement report and I'm not going to discuss it anymore. And a lot of times, they wanted to contact the hospital. Well, the crime was within the hospital, it was sexual misconduct, and no, I'm not going to discuss that, because keep in mind, when you are a crime victim, when you are a victim of a crime, someone's broken the law, so there's legal issues. And you as a travel nurse do not have to disclose legal issues to anybody. You just tell them, you just have to think like an attorney. Have that mindset, think like an attorney. A crime has been committed against me, a law enforcement report was made, and I'm not discussing it any further, and no, I don't feel comfortable, and no, you cannot contact my previous employer or contact the hospital system because of that, and then just period, leave it at that. Now, but that's why I said, you know, the challenge is that when it comes to crime or when it comes to domestic violence situations, or when it comes to sexual assault, sexual misconduct, I have not seen that addressed within any company within the travel nurse industry. And so that is definitely something that I feel like should be addressed, you know, by these travel companies for the safety and security of these nurses, you know, of us really. Now, if you have experienced this yourself, I encourage you to comment to this video and tell everybody about your experience and perhaps what you've done. Or if you don't want to disclose that it's happened to you and just want to talk third person, please do so, because, you know, certainly there could be other options to address these kinds of issues. So we as travel nurses do not face retaliation when we are victimized by crime or sexual assault, sexual misconduct while on assignment. So that's today's episode of I Travel Nurse TV. And remember, when you're on assignment, keep in mind you're in a vulnerable situation, especially if you're traveling alone. Consider getting a safety product from Damsel in Defense: stun guns, pepper spray, door alarms, and so forth. So that's today's episode, I Travel Nurse TV, and next time, stay safe and have fun on your current assignment. Goodbye.